Leaving the Catholic Church isn't about rejecting God. It's about rediscovering God without the walls and parameters of the church. Hey guys, it's John here in the studio on a fabulous day. It is a little overcast outside, but it's going to be in the upper 50s today, which is a lovely fall day. I'm going to have a little bit of time today out there clearing up some leaves, which will be fun. I often talk in this channel about the reasons why the church has failed in many different things, but I thought I'd like to talk about the beautiful things that I found once I left the church and what I discovered without the parameters of the guilt and all of that. What I found was a truly unexpected peace and clarity and empowerment. And it's beyond the fear, the guilt, the doctrines. And it really is kind of a sacred path if you think about it. You know, the Catholic system, it programs fear through sin and confession and eternal punishment. It has you literally recite things repetitively so that it becomes part of your subconscious mind. This idea that you have to, use your profession of faith. You have to consistently be indoctrinated into these ideas, and it becomes this underlying current where we feel a lot of self-doubt, a lot of self-worth, and leaving that up behind allows you to breathe again, because all of those are based in fears. All of those are based in managing fear and using fear to keep you in line. But when you leave that system, you naturally exhale. You naturally release the fears, and that the lack of fearing the damnation is giving you the opportunity to simply be human, simply be in the world and choose to be loving, choose to be caring. You begin to realize that morality doesn't require fear, and love and empathy are enough. That idea that I can be a moral, loving, caring person without the fear of being burning in hell if I'm not is important, because it allows us to expand into a greater awareness of our oneness with God. The voice of shame from the church begins to fade away, and it's replaced by self-forgiveness and compassion. And then you suddenly start to rediscover joy without the constant self-surveillance or sin checking. You start recognizing this direct relationship with the divine, and you no longer need the middleman, the priests, the confessions, the rituals to reach God, because God is with you in every moment. God is love, and when you release the fear, love shows itself clearly. The infinite reveals itself when fear is removed. Buddha says the secret to enlightenment is the eradication of fear, and the Sufis say the veil between us and God is our own fears. And the church peddles fears. It literally uses fear to keep people in line. Instead of being a ritual of asking and begging, prayer becomes a conversation. We start to look at the idea of being one with God and being in a co-equal partnership with God. You don't need to perform or to get validation from God. You feel God's presence in the silence. Be still and know that I am God. In the stillness, not in the fear. You walk in nature and you see how beautiful everything works together, and it all just starts to make sense because that is part of God. And kindness becomes the ritual. You're not just in a pew doing the sit, stand, kneel Catholic calisthenics. You're literally being kind in the now. And what did the Dalai Lama say? My religion is simple. My religion is kindness. What did Muhammad say? He said, "He who knows not kindness has no faith." See, God is too big and beautiful to be encompassed by any one school of thought or religion, but the Catholic faith tells you they are the only way. That's what the word Catholic means. It means universal. It means we are the only way. But when you break yourself off from the rest of humanity, you lose the beautiful image of God, because God is in everything and everyone. Love is found everywhere, and God is love. And once you realize this, the divine presence of God becomes very intimate. It's immediate. It's here. It's now. It's personal. And there's no hierarchy involved or required. You begin to understand that spirituality and religion are not the same thing. Religions are the doctrines and dogmas and laws of man, and spirituality is the direct communion with God. You find freedom of thought and questioning. In the church, if you asked a question as a kid, you were punished for questioning because you were questioning against faith. And the idea of this thought and questioning outside about Catholicism, I can't tell you how many times I've quoted Buddha or Krishna or Muhammad and had the Catholics come at me telling me that I'm a heretic for even thinking about those people. You're allowed to question. You're allowed to see the beauty of God in all people without punishment. The idea that you can critically think about this experience of faith and that you can coexist beautifully with everyone. I've been to 32 countries and I've met beautiful people everywhere. Most of them weren't Christian, but they were beautiful people. When you study all the different texts from all the different religions and you start to explore, you start to find the commonalities. You start to find the love in all of them. The golden rule is found in all of them. Treat others as you'd like to be treated. And so suddenly you start to realize that if they're all saying the same thing when it comes to love, that must be a divine truth of some kind. But they all say something different when it comes to fear. They all have their own laws, doctrines, and dogmas that are based in fear to keep you into their faith. But the loving side of this is that they all say the same thing in love. And that's the truth that's organically emerging from all of them as a true spiritual identity. The idea that God is within all of them and that we have to recognize that God is the loving part of all of them. The fear is the mind of man trying to control God. We each have the ability to be free in our thoughts. And that freedom of thought strengthens our own inner guidance because we come to trust our own inner guidance. We tend to recognize that within ourselves is this innate wisdom of God when we're looking at it through the goggles of love. Questioning becomes sacred invitations, not threats to the doctrine. We start to understand more. We start to grow more in our awareness when we question. We say, what does this mean? And then when we look at the question so how would love react in this situation? How would love look at this situation? What is the loving thing to do here? What happens is the questions go away because you start to realize the issues that we struggle with are all based in fear. People talk about healing from generational guilt and the unworthiness of a Catholic upbringing. Well, these are just simply imprints of the ideas and doctrines of a church that has told you to be in fear and anxiety. The generational systems, they keep you in the Catholic faith. They keep you going in the Catholic faith. I am absolutely blessed. When she said spirituality is a personal journey, go find what you believe. My mom was fantastic. And she had her master's degree in liturgy. She was head of liturgical doctrine at our church. The church peddles fear. It starts at the beginning. They start with original sin and your inherent brokenness. But when you leave the faith, when you leave it, it allows you to reclaim your innocence. You become as a child to enter the kingdom of heaven. A child doesn't have a faith or a doctrine or dogma. They just have presence and love and innocence and worthiness. They literally are not thinking about the things of lacking worthiness or guilt or dogma. A child does not have those things. Become as a child to enter the kingdom of heaven. And when you come back to that place of realizing all those fear-based ideologies can just fall away, and you realize you were never fallen, you were always divine at your core. You're always in that presence of that child there within, and you begin to parent yourself with love instead of punishment. You begin to say, okay, I'm not going to beat myself up for this. I'm not going to be guilty for being that person, or I'm not going to fear God and the judgment and hell, because none of those things are found in other religions. Those are strictly Christian ideologies.
And now a quick word from our sponsor. Coffee Time with John. This channel runs off coffee, so get your coffee and tea at johnsjoe.com.
When you release the ideas of these structures and these divisive ideas that hurt people, the generational healing can occur because now you're not looking at them as a doctrine. You're looking at them as a person person who's struggling with their own fears and anxieties. And then our children see us loving one another. Our children see us treating each other kindly, no matter what their faith is. And that the children begin to inherit that. They start to become the next generation that is more loving, more caring. And they start to embrace love as the only doctrine. As we just love one another. We take care of one another. My son has no religion. But when I called him and told him that our friend Holly's house was hit by a tornado, he says, "When you coming to get me? Let's go." There was no question. It was, we love Holly. We're going to go help Holly. We're going to do whatever we need to help her. There was no question about it. It was just, I was so proud of my son because he showed in that moment that he was a loving and caring person. And that's better than any religion I've ever seen him in the world. And when you discover that love is the only law, and it's the only law that truly matters, without the dogma, compassion becomes the guiding compass. You start to realize that you are able to choose to be compassionate, to choose to be loving. You stop judging others based on their belief systems or their lifestyles, and you start to feel lighter. Everything becomes easier because now you're simply choosing to be loving and caring. And when you simply choose to be loving and caring, what are you doing? You're bringing heaven to earth because God is love. Life feels lighter. Relationships become more authentic and unconditional. You truly begin to embody what Jeshua taught, what he brought into this world, his message. Instead of just repeating rote patterns and rote doctrines and things, you become the message itself. And you reclaim your authentic self by leaving. And that allows you to drop the masks of religion and the conformity that you're stuck into, like being in a cage. You can open the door and fly. You can reconnect with the parts of yourself that were suppressed by or labeled as sinful. Your own creativity, your sexuality, your individuality are now celebrated, not shamed. You step into full self-ownership, no longer waiting for permission to exist, but you live authentically. And that becomes the greatest act of worship, because when you live authentically, you are bringing the kingdom of heaven to earth, because that is love. When you love yourself without conditions and you put yourself out there in that expression of love, you are literally bringing love to earth. And God is love, according to the Bible, right? And when you step into that authenticity and you start being more loving, you start being more caring, you start to build healthier spiritual communities around you, because people start loving each other no matter what the ideologies, no matter what the doctrines or dogmas. And you begin attracting people of like mind or who are on similar journeys and finding the freedom to simply love one another no matter what their beliefs are. Conversations will shift from judgment to curiosity and compassion. You start to realize that what they're living and what they're expressing is interesting, but it also aligns, because everybody in the world wants to be loved. You find belonging among people who value presence, not perfection, not the idea of that you have to fill in the doctrines or fit into the rules. Spiritual community becomes about connection, not about subjugation or control. It becomes about being in the love. You realize that the church talks about the body of Christ. Well, Christ, of course, is a word that I don't use for myself, because it denotes that Jeshua was something to raise up on a pedestal. But Jeshua was a man, not a deity. And Jeshua's message was to be loving and love humanity itself. He repeatedly worked with people who did not believe the same as he. Samaritans and women and Romans and lepers and all kinds of different people. When you start living the teachings of Jeshua, ironically, you have to leave the church to do so. You have to leave religion behind, and that brings you closer to what Jeshua actually taught, the love and compassion for all people. I leave you one commandment: love one another. You recognize Jeshua as a teacher of empowerment, not a ruler of obedience. His message of love and forgiveness and equality takes on real meaning, because now you're living it fully. You stop worshiping the man and you start living his message, living what he talked about. And freedom becomes the true resurrection of your own experience. You resurrect yourself from the doctrines and the rules and the regulations and the guilt and the self-worth issues, and you start becoming fully free to be your authentic self and love accordingly. Leaving Catholicism is not about rebellion. It's about rebirth. It's a renaissance of your inner self. You're not walking away from God. You're walking with God, finally, and free to listen in the stillness, in the small voice within yourself. When you find yourself in this position of understanding that you're one with the source and you do not need the doctrines and dogmas, that you can be loving, and that is delivering God to earth, you start to realize you have freedom. You start to breathe easier. You start to love more. You start to have a better experience around you because you're no longer judging from doctrines. You're living from love. And the more you live love, there will be healing in yourself, but a healing in the people around you too, because they'll start to hear within you the message that they've always sought. They start to see within you the validation of their person. They start to understand within you that you are the one who is listening to them fully and allowing them to be themselves fully. You are the one who's loving them. You are the one who's delivering love to them. You're the one bringing God into the conversation. And there's no need for the doctrines and dogmas and fear-based ideologies. In fact, when you strip them away, you find a clearer and closer connection with God. And it's wonderful. And it feels great. And when people come to you with their judgments because of their beliefs, you actually can look at them with the compassion of understanding that that's just their fears. That's their fears manifesting in a negative way. All negative emotions come from fear. All positive ones come from love. And when you look at it that way, when they attack you with heretic and blasphemer and antichrist and false prophet, which I hear on a regular basis, I don't take any of it personally. Because I know that's theirs, not mine. That's their fear, not my love. And I can love them enough to say, okay, that's where they are. I accept that. And it's so freeing. It's so beautiful to be able to understand that I don't have to live in the fear that they're trying to project upon me. I one time told a woman, I said, I do not accept the fear you're offering. And she got incensed that I said she was offering fear. But she was. But I didn't have to be involved in it. So it really comes down to understanding that you are one with God. And the understanding of that is freedom itself. It's joy, it's expression. And you can be that in every moment of every day. And that's my thought on this. You guys have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon. See ya. Bye.